What's up, wrestling fans, trading card collectors? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Cards. Today's video, it's a little bit different. We've got Andrew from the Lukas, Tigers, and Brons Podcast. I'm a huge fan of the show. Never miss a show. Download it every single day. Did I mention every single day? That's right, because they're doing content, one new podcast every single day. This video, like I said, is going to be a little bit different than what some of you who view my content on this channel or listen to my podcasts, a little bit different than what some of you may be used to. While Andrew is familiar with wrestling and knows a few things about it, he isn't what I would call a wrestling collector. So of course, you may be asking, Zhan, why in the heck are you getting non-wrestling collectors on here again? It's simple. I brought him on the show to help you, the wrestling card community. Andrew is a wealth of knowledge. Whether it's thinking outside the box towards the hobby or towards life, Andrew brings an awesome perspective that hopefully will help a lot of you watching this today. In this interview, we talk about Andrew's time when he worked for Garyvee and how working for Garyvee led to an encounter with a wrestling Hall of Famer. We also talk about how the mainstream views wrestling cards. You know, the ones out there buying sports cards and F1, but maybe they're not buying wrestling. Maybe that's Andrew. What does Andrew think about that? Could Andrew ever see himself getting into wrestling cards? We also discuss other things in the hobby, such as how to color up and level up your collection, life lessons through the hobby and also through creating content, and whether or not Andrew actually has a PC. I think there's this misconception out there that a lot of mainstream hobby content creators, they want to talk about the flips, they want to talk about the money, prices, market, etc. But I think some of them don't talk a lot about what they actually hold and what their favorite things are to actually collect. It's funny, a lot of people out there say, the collectors are the backbone of the hobby, which is true. And everybody likes a good flip, myself included. But I think we've gotten to the point where so much is focused on the dollars and cents and not the actual collection and the act of collecting the items that are collected. So we kind of dispel a little bit of that rumor as we talk to Andrew about maybe his PC. So let's go ahead and jump into the conversation with Andrew Goldberg from the Lukas, Tigers, and Brons Podcast. Oh my!
I feel ready. I feel very fortunate, man. I appreciate you inviting me on the show.
Mr. Andrew Goldberg, Lukas, Tigers, and Brons, welcome.
Dude, thanks for having me, Zhan. Big
thanks
fan.
Thanks for giving me your
so.
time. Like, it's very important to get people's time, and especially with you and Cage, you guys doing the shows every single day. Huge fan. I want to start off with just having you give an introduction to yourself, because I think there's a lot of people that I've tried to get them to listen to your show, but I think there's a lot of people that watch my content that may not know who you are. So,
sure. I'm an immigrant, played soccer my whole life, love sports, love competing, love analyzing and scouting, what makes, for me, it started, what separates a professional athlete from a college athlete, I played college sports. I didn't make it to the pros. So, that experience probably kind of sits inside of me. And I was always wondering, what separates the greats? So that's where my passion for sports comes from. After soccer, it was my first love. It died. I love watching basketball. I love watching the NBA. And dude, I'm fortunate, man. Through no real explanation I have, we started a podcast when COVID hit. It took off. It got traction. They say styles make fights. I'm really, really lucky to have an awesome co-host in Cage, who kind of, we have this dynamic that just works. And now I get to talk about sports and sports cards for a living. So I'm very, very fortunate. And any of you guys that have listened to Lukas, Tigers, and Brons, oh my, we're a daily show. Every single day, we just come on. We talk about what's happening in sports, what's happening in culture, what's happening in the markets and money and economics, and how that impacts collectibles in that space. And then we bring on interesting guests that we think are relevant to the audience, from Gary Vaynerchuk to Patrick Bet-David to different guys. Like, I want to bring on the Oklahoma State professor. He wrote an article in Yahoo Sports about how sports cards are teaching people about money, teaching kids about money. You saw that article?
Yeah.
So everyone from these big wig influencers to professors, and how it's impacting our kids, and all the way across the board. And it's been the best year and a half of my life.
And that's one reason I love your guys' content, because it's all over the place. And some people may not like that because they're so closed-minded. And one thing I've done, and I've tried to tell people, is consume content outside of your bubble. And I'll just be honest, if you guys are talking about I don't watch a lot of NBA anymore. So if you're talking some NBA, I don't really care per se, but I'm taking what you guys are saying and I'm seeing your logic and I'm applying it to something else. And like, that's why I like everything you guys do as far as like running the gamut. You mentioned Garyvee. I got to say, first off, thank you for this. Since I won,
did I send you that one?
Yeah, won the contest. I tried to get one of those shirts when they first came out, and I didn't get one. And then when I found out I won your guys' contest, I was like, yes. So you
guys,
go ahead.
If you're listening, can I do a quick giveaway?
Yes, go ahead.
I don't know how you're going to do this, but we bought, I think it was 24 of his 12 and a half book, the new book that Gary came out with. I'll give 3 away. I don't know how it is. Just message Zhan. You guys figure it out, but I'll give 3 of those away.
Let's do it this way. The first 3 people to comment on this video after it comes out, you just leave a comment that you want a book and then DM me on social media and we'll get it done.
And I'll ask you guys, because I like doing giveaways like that shirt where people actually use it, not just the giveaway for giveaway's sake.
Right.
So if you're going to ask for the book, try to at least read it. If it's a terrible book, don't read it, but like give it a shot.
Yeah, one thing I'm trying to get people within the wrestling card space, we'll get into that in a minute, is trying to look at things more, not necessarily from a transactional mindset, but realizing like, you got to move this to get to this, to color up, to level up. You can't hold on to everything. Let's go back to Garyvee for a minute. Sure. You worked for him for a little while. Talk about that experience.
Garyvee was like the tip of the iceberg for me in the sense that I'm the kind of guy, like I mentioned, I'm an immigrant. I grew up in a family business, but I always struggled working for somebody else. Like Robert Greene's book, like 50 Laws of Power. I kind of undermine the leader of the organization somehow, some way. So I've gotten fired everywhere I've gone to work. I think it's like 9 straight firings. I'm really proud of it, guys. And my dad fired me from the cafe. So like
that should tell you something right there.
That should tell you something. And it's not because I'm not a good employee. It's just I've run my mouth too much. But yeah, I worked for Gary. The way I got the job was I was flipping sports cards in early March of 2019. And I made a few $1,000, like nothing crazy, not like the money today. And he just released Empathy Wines, his wine brand. And he said, anybody who buys Club Empathy, which is like the big bundles, like $800, I'm going to give you a call tonight. And I'm not a big drinker. I actually don't drink at all. Wine is delicious. Every once in a while I have it, but I'm not a big drinker. But I was like, let's take a shot here. So I bought Club Empathy with the money I made from sports cards. He called me. This is like midnight too, because he goes he works like a different schedule. And the preview to that was I accidentally ran into him at this 5 a.m. basketball game maybe a month before, and him and I guarded each other. And I said, hey, Gary, like when he called me, I was like, I don't know if you remember, we played basketball against each other at 5 a.m. hoops. By the way, this is all recorded on my podcast, No Overnight Success, that I haven't done an episode on in like 2.5 years. But I have the recording. I was like, we guarded each other, played against each other. I'm wondering if, what it would take to get into your ecosystem, right? Because I was kind of at this weird stage in my life where I didn't know what was next professionally. And I was like, when you don't know, go work with someone who does it.
Yeah.
Who's good.
Makes sense.
And he said, he's like, what do you do? I was like, I'm a born and bred kind of like salesperson at heart. And he's like, it's funny. We've been wanting to hire a salesperson for Empathy Wines. And he brought me on, and that's that. And I was there for 6 months. But here's the thing. I'll give you guys the gist of how I see it. They're a marketing organization, and I was the first salesperson they've ever hired. And if any of you guys are out there that are salespeople that are commission driven, this was a salary drop, right? So no commission. So I think, did well, 100K in sales for Empathy Wines brand. But if you guys know salespeople, they come and go when they want. Yeah. They have their own schedule. Are you in sales, Zane?
No, I just know the business. Yeah, I know people that do sales, and it's interesting.
And I need that freedom, right? Like right. I'm someone who my core of what I love in life is to be able to control my time. Something you said, time is so valuable,
right?
And be able to do, like, I've always wanted to have freedom, and you can't really do that in a corporate environment. And that rubs people a little bit the wrong way, right? Like, why am I here, but he's not, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, I don't know how to do office politics. I get very weird with them.
So did you just did he just show you the door and you just blew up on him like you got fired from other things, or was it a kind of a cordial parting?
So Gary's on the go. Believe it or not, Gary isn't one of those businessmen that manages his team. He does his thing, and he has a team that manages the people. So okay. Andy Kranak, who's a friend, honestly, we talk on the phone every once in a while. He was the one that fired me. But honestly, man, no, I called Gary as soon as I got fired, I think I sent him a voice message. Hey, G, like disappointed for sure, but like, I just want to thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, that's huge opportunity.
That's a huge opportunity, man. And I also know myself. Like, I don't know if I'm a good fit in corporate America. Like, that's not my thing. And his company is now 1,000 people deep.
Well, you're flipping cards before you got into this. A lot of people, especially in wrestling cards, see Gary as like the guy for getting this whole boom started, but you're doing it before. So tell us how you actually got into the hobby, where you started from what were you into? Was it a monetary thing you got into it? Did Gary kind of put the pedal to the metal for you on that? Let's just talk about how you got into it.
So I collected cards when I was a kid. Brett Favre and Terrell Davis were like my two for some reason. And one summer I went away to camp and I got back and my mom gave all my cards away.
Oh man.
I love my mom. Love my mom. She's my everything. She's my rock. But that's the one resentment I have against her. I'm like, how could you do that? You know how much I love these guys. I love the stats on the back and the story. In 2017 though, or 2018, Gary started doing trash talk. Remember that?
Yep.
And talking about how you could make money flipping. And I was like, this is perfect. My whole life I've been flipping. Like, I played soccer growing up and I used to buy up the cleats that my friends already wore. You would send those back to Nike. And if Nike chose, they would send you a gift card, or it was called a manufacturer's defect.
Oh,
so like some cleats rip because we play so much, but for them, they're a huge conglomerate. You would send them in and they would give you like the actual retail value if they were deemed manufacturer's defect. So I'd buy up my friend's cleats for like $5, send them to Nike, get gift certificate, and then sell the gift certificate. So I've always loved that life.
Yeah, same.
Like it's the same thing. And in college, my senior year, we bought out a bike shop that was going out of business, and we sold all the inventory on Craigslist. And a lot of stuff we didn't sell, we gave away to the local kids. It was just one of the best summers of my life. So cards were like, this is the same game. And it was from watching Gary's trash talk that the idea of like, dude, why are you not doing this with cards? Cards are a little easier. It's not a big bike that you have to sell.
Right. Those shipping charges can eat up your profits in a hurry.
For sure. So, and people have to come to your house and meet off Craigslist. So like, I like that, but like, you don't also know who's coming. Cards, you just put it in a bubble mailer, ship it out. So yeah, that's how it worked out. And I actually bought a Joe Namath card. And the first day on the job, I brought that to Gary. I said, appreciate the opportunity. I know you're a huge Jets fan. So.
Right. So where did that evolve from where you got into it to where you are now? I think for anybody that watches your guys' content, I think maybe they might throw a criticism at you and say, do you even collect, bro? Are you just the flipper? You know, I get it. So I guess the question would be, do you actually have a PC? And what is your response to like I ride the line. I'm a collector and I like to flip stuff. So where are you at as far as that goes? And what do you have to say as far as like, what do you PC? And then what do you say to detractors who criticize you for trying to make money off the cards?
Well, bro, I was broke.
Yeah.
I would keep all my cards, but I needed the money. But I think I studied in college economics. I love microeconomics. I think macroeconomics is a little bit of BS, if I could be honest. But micro, supply and demand, game theory, inelastic versus elastic demand, I love that. And I love markets. And I think every market needs flippers, like literally the guys that go buy the wax and flip it. I think those are healthy. They provide liquidity to a market as much as you guys hate them.
That's very important, yeah.
Investors, short-term people, you know, they like Zhan Moran and they're willing to hold him for 2 months, 3 months, 1 month, but a little bit shorter term investors, flippers, investors, and collectors. I think a healthy market has all three. I think it's a symbiotic relationship. I don't think it's an adverse relationship as they position it.
Right.
And I've navigated through that. So like the podcast has been really good to me. I mean, sports cards in general were good to me last year. So now I don't have to flip as much. Now I could collect. So I like to collect Kobe Bryant, who was my idol growing up. He was like, I always felt that I wasn't the most talented. So I wanted to learn how to get ahead and I needed to find role models. And he was that one. Like,
that's some serious work ethic.
I'm 32 years old. 1996 was his rookie year. 13, 14 years old is when you really watch sports.
Yeah.
That's his prime with the Lakers. So Kobe was my guy. And I love game used autographed Upper Deck autos or Panini, but mostly Upper Deck. I like that brand a lot. Game used patch autos of Kobe. So now because I have money, I'm able to collect. But I started as an investor, my first real profitable flip was Zion based Prism cards when he was still injured and missed half the season for the Pelicans. People forgot about him.
Right.
And his base cards were like 30, 40, $50. And I bought up 50 of them, everything I had. And I was like, I'm going to buy these cards. I'm going to get them graded. And I know he's going to be good enough. So his market's not going to tank and it might even go up.
Yeah. And then, I mean, so when you started doing that, did you have the Kobe collection that you have now, or with you got to start somewhere. And I'm guessing that really paid for the Kobe stuff.
These were my two first flips, and they gave me you need a bankroll.
Yes.
It's great and all to say you're a collector, but if all of your liquidity is tied up, what good is that, right? Because some people have cash flow for businesses and work, and they make good money. That's fine, but I think it's a little bit presumptuous to assume that everyone can do that.
Right.
So in the beginning, I didn't put my money into illiquid cards. I wanted to find the most liquid card, and that was the Zion-based Prism.
Sure.
That was my first flip. Then I moved into Kobe rookie cards. So I bought up a lot of Topps 138 rookies and a lot of his Kobe Ultra 52.
Mm-hmm.
I love that one, the black front. So that was my way of I believe in Kobe, and I like these rookie cards that are liquid. And those two kind of sales, flips, timing, PSA was open with the value sub. That gave me a little bankroll to be able to okay, now I could buy some stuff I really love and I could hold for a few years.
Well, there you go. We just dispelled the myth that you don't have a PC. I don't know. Actually, nobody's ever said that. I think you guys get a bad rap sometimes from talking about too much market stuff. And it's what you said, it takes everybody to make these ecosystems work. So moving into wrestling cards, which
can I talk about the bad rap and
go ahead.
I welcome it. You guys know, first off, I come from a Jewish, Russian, Ukrainian family where we like to argue. That's kind of what we do for dinner. My grandpa would come over, he'd bring up a topic, and people we call it a discussion, but we're loud and passionate.
Sure.
So we welcome that. I don't mind people disagreeing. I don't mind people being yo, why do you do that? Or what about this? And I think it's healthy. I've always encouraged that. I think I never make things personal though. You never want to attack someone personally because no one's bad people. 99% of the hobby is some of the nicest, kindest, most welcoming people. And that's wrestling cards, Pokemon cards, and traditional sports cards. But you can't just talk about flips, talk about collecting. Cool. Heard you. I think it's a good feedback. So I welcome it. And it probably comes from my sports days when your coach would be hey, pass the ball like this, but not like this. I think you'd be foolish not to at least hear that feedback and say, where are my blind spots? How could I improve?
Well, and from that perspective, in my opinion, it takes the flipping mindset plus the collector mindset to have a good collection. Because I told you before we got on here, which it will have aired by now, but I just interviewed Drake and he was talking about the Vince McMahon Superfractor 101 auto that was just shy of $10,000. It's the highest selling raw public sale of a wrestling card in history, and Drake got it. And I was like, how did you get that? And he said, I had to let go of stuff that I had in my collection. So if he didn't have that mindset, he wouldn't have been able to get that card. And it's exactly what you just said.
Collectors are interesting because eventually collectors sell too, right?
You would think, unless they're hoarders, and then they just, that's the problem too, though, because how many collections have been thrown away? Yours was thrown away. What happens if there was a super valuable card in there that would have been valuable to someone else? We'll never know because people don't find the right times to let things go. But anyway, let's talk into wrestling. And I know we started this and I was like, I want to talk to somebody who doesn't know wrestling cards. So
what's the deal with Mick Foley?
I don't know. Where do you want to take that?
That was because when I was 8, 9 years old, I watched wrestling on a little black and white TV. We didn't have a lot of money, and my mom was like, turn that off. That's a disgrace. So I remember because we didn't know, we didn't have wrestling where we come from. She's like, this guy's all bloodied and they're jumping off of cages and they're killing each other. what is, I don't want my 8-9-year-old kid watching this. And Mick Foley and Bill Goldberg, right? He would like headbutt people, like sting them.
Yeah.
Those were the two wrestlers that I remember.
Hey, that's fantastic. You've already got, you've got a jumping off place. So I'm guessing you don't own any of their cards right now, or is that something you've been looking at?
No.
So from the wrestling perspective, like, do you have, like, is that something you would eventually go after because you have any kind of nostalgia attachment to it? I can say from the wrestling card community that you're probably not as familiar with, that's what drives the money, is the nostalgia and the player collecting, the talent that these people latch onto. It's the same as Marvel, same as Pokemon. So it's all character driven. And we'll just start with that. Like, do you see yourself ever kind of looking into those wrestlers that you liked, or is that something that's out of sight, out of mind?
So if you guys listen to our show, the one thing that our audience always beats up on me on is I don't really watch, I don't know a lot of movies.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen Star Wars, Marvel, all that stuff. And I've never really watched like wrestling. I loved sports. Like, it was just what I was drawn to. Like, I love the realistic nature of it. And when I found out wrestling wasn't real, I now know it is real. It's just a different real, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yes.
I don't have any nostalgia to it. I never connected with any of the characters.
Makes
but
sense.
I'll tell you, man, David Peck.
Yes.
He was our first guest on the show. I love that guy, man. He taught, you could learn a lot about different markets just by watching one market, right? So like how the wrestling sports card market has evolved is incredible. How tight-knit the community is incredible. How generous they are with their time and willingness to help is incredible. So I respect the wrestling community a lot. I respect the Pokemon community a lot because they're very tight-knit. They're very supportive. It's all like these like virtual internet friends where you could just reach out and be like, hey, I'm curious about wrestling cards. And this is a complete stranger. And more than likely, he'll hop on a Zoom call or hop on a Zoom call and be like, hey, check this out. Or what do you think about this? So I respect the community a lot.
Yeah, that's a huge part. Like we've got people that just like, they're like, yeah, I like my cards, but I'm actually here more so for the community, which, in turn, I think that's what your guys' content, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Like, that's it for me. Like, I love tuning in every day, to the point that I bought the NFT when you helped me get on with that. Like, I had bought the WWE NFTs, but I hadn't actually used MetaMask and all that stuff. We'll get into that in a minute. But the wrestling cards, the community.
Can I tell you a story?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is from my Garyvee days. So when I worked at Empathy, we had a list of like kind of Gary's biggest, I think it was his text messaging community. And I would do calls and I would cold call. And one of the cold calls I had was with this awesome lady. And she was, I want to call her a life coach. She was just like one of those people that just had a good spirit about her.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a cold call that turned into a friendship call.
Cool.
And I would always do this thing. I would say, if you guys support the business, we really believe in the product. It's good wine. And if you ever want to come to New York, I'd love to show you around Hudson Yards, give you a tour, and give you a bottle of wine. You can go to BYOB, etc. So she came and she brought her husband. And we spent like 3-4 hours talking. Brought him up to Hudson Yards. It's like a beautiful view around New York City. You get to see the vessel. And that her husband was Eric Bischoff.
Oh, yeah, nice.
And then we had him on the show. And did he create SmackDown?
No, he basically created Monday Nitro. Like but he's a great example of what me and you both connect with, and that's work ethic. And he started as, in the AWA in the 80s. When I was real little, I used to watch that. They would do replays on ESPN after school. And he was like a, little announcer. And then I've heard stories of him barely, they got stuff repoed out of their driveway because he couldn't make money. Fast forward 10 years, he's on the top of the wrestling world. And then he eventually got into, when WWE hired him back a couple years ago, when Fox bought the rights for SmackDown, that's when he took over SmackDown for a short period. So what an amazing story.
And this is a guy who got fired by Vince McMahon.
Right.
Think about that, right? So it's just like, don't burn bridges, be grateful. Like, those are all lessons. And that was an awesome family. I was so cool to meet them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to tie in Garyvee with this also. Let's talk a little bit about comparing and contrasting. Feel free to ask any questions you want if you don't understand something. my biggest issue with wrestling cards is, I've heard you guys talk about it. I've heard Card talk about it. I've heard other major platforms talking hobby heads talk about wrestling. They'll cover a sale like, oh, this rock sticker, it just sold for $30,000. Okay, that's not. Let's talk F1. They just like bypass it. They don't even give it a time of day. So I guess, and starting off, and we've seen Gary talk over and over and over again about wrestling cards and flexing the wrestling cards.
He just tweeted about it this week.
Right, exactly. And I'm at the point, and this has kind of been since day one. Why do you think wrestling cards are not put, not from, I don't want to say from a dollar perspective yet, but just from a respect perspective? Why do you think they're not looked at like some of the ancillary things? Pokemon, Marvel, they're character driven. They necessarily may not exist again because they're character driven. There's autographs, parallels, but not only are they characters, but they're characters you can go see in person. So what I've been trying to wrap my head around with a lot of people is why wrestling cards aren't on that same level.
So legit question. Obviously, like this could be a whole podcast in and of itself, right? Like why, and it would be a good topic to bring on an expert like David Peck. There's another guy on Twitter that was like the godfather of wrestling cards. I can't remember.
Might be Rob England. He's right there with David.
Rob England.
Yeah. They're like, they've got the vintage collections that there are. Period.
Yeah. What came to my mind was recognizability, right? So it's not every wrestling card. Andre the Giant is like a sought after card because he's so recognizable, right? Ric Flair, very recognizable in culture.
Sure.
So I think a part of it is the recognizability. It's the same thing with football, right? Like, why don't running backs get more love? Even like really good running backs, right?
Sure.
You could go historic or you could go contemporary. And I think it's because if they took their helmet off and they walked into a bar, I'm not sure that many people would know who they are. You do the same thing with LeBron James, or you do the same thing with John Morant, or even Zion. You walk in, you're like, okay, he's in the NBA.
Right. Yeah.
I know who that is. I've seen him. So same thing with Pokemon. They're very recognizable. Like, Pokemon, they have this very distinct branded style. With wrestling, like even Triple H, right? I think he runs like the marketing. He's like, I think he might be the COO or something really high up.
Yeah. And
his wife also with Stephanie McMahon.
Yep.
She's brilliant. Both really, really brilliant business people. I don't know how recognizable they are. Like if you see them in a New York bar, you would even know that that's Triple H.
It's a good point.
So I think there's something there.
So do you think, okay, so let's transition to this. As far as like the people who are looking at these sales, and I understand there maybe the answer to this question may be because wrestling cards don't have enough zeros behind it. But why do you think that a lot of the platforms, I guess I'll include you guys, but you guys have talked about it a lot. So I don't know if I want to put you in that category, but a lot of people, they don't want to talk about it, but yet they'll talk about these, again, the other fringe sports, I don't know. I'm not going to say F1, but maybe Pokemon, Marvel, where it's character-based, character story-driven things that, prop up the cardboard. But then it's also rarity, scarcity within the cardboard. Like all of those things exist with wrestling. The closest thing I can compare it to is UFC. I mean, UFC is a real sport, but it's still, as you like to say, guys in their underwear running around hitting each other. It's the same thing as wrestling.
Is that a direct quote? Did I say that?
You said that. Yes. Because somebody, Cage asked you why you didn't buy wrestling or UFC, and you're like, I don't like to collect guys in their underwear. And I just lost it. I was like, this is awesome.
I'm sorry to all your listeners.
No way. It's hilarious. And that's why I was like, okay, right then is when I was like, I've got to get Andrew on the show because I've got to understand but it was beyond that. It was, an outsider's perspective on wrestling cards, because I think a lot of times we can get kind of caught up in our own bubble. You know how that goes, and you can't see the forest for the trees as far as like why something's not working. So that's what I've been trying to do, is just kind of crack the question is, why are we not elevated up where all these other ones are?
Do you think that you guys don't get there's enough zeros? I mean, the Rock card, which I don't know. Do you consider the Rock card as football or wrestling? Because he's in his Miami Hurricanes jersey. but really he's known for wrestling, but now he's like kind of a cultural influencer.
Exactly. That's the whole thing. There's so much culture within wrestling cards that people just aren't thinking of. We've had, Ric Flair has completely penetrated the hip hop world. I don't know how that happened, but that Ric Flair drip song started and it was off to the races with him in hip hop.
Isn't his daughter in wrestling too?
Charlotte. Yeah. She's one of the top female, her cards are very popular, especially like the autos and parallels and stuff like that. But there's a lot of pop culture within wrestling, and we're just trying to figure out, I say we, the community, trying to figure out why it's not translating over to mainstream hobby. And I've talked to people who have set up shows and they're like, people walk by my case and they stop because it's not the same Zion cards. It's not the same, shiny Prism stuff. It's vintage wrestling. It's new, rare cut auto wrestling. It's a pattern interrupt. So things aren't adding up. And that's what I just wanted to get your opinion on that from an outsider perspective about, what may be going on with this.
I have two thoughts. First off, I think the wrestling niche is actually pretty big. I guess we get to quantify that, and you'll tell me if I'm wrong, right? And how you would quantify that, or how you would. But second, I view you guys if we take Pokemon for example, right? Pokemon only really went mainstream recently when they got a few young influencers like Logan Paul,
sure,
Bryce Hall, to pair up and start to have conversations and do business with the OGs like Gary.
Mm-hmm.
Gary, the Pokemon King, I think is it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think there's that. Gary, who is on Pawn Stars, who has a bit of a reputation, but he's not an influencer by any means.
Sure, right.
Logan Paul talks about how much Gary actually was a mentor for him in this space, right? And taking someone who grew up as a fan and educating them in sports cards, and they have a sizable following and they bring a lot of people in. So I think that it was subtle but super important. I've been listening to Impulsive Show because I think they do their content really, really well. And he talked about that, how Gary, Logan Paul cracked his PSA 10 Charizard. That's a $200,000 card. He cracked it out using pliers, and he sent it into BGS, and he got a BGS 10 on it. And he thought Gary would be super upset with him, but Gary wasn't at all. And that mentorship between the OGs in the space of actually collecting cards and memorabilia, introducing influencers who love the sport but may not have collected, and being able to bridge the gap that way, I think that's important. So I would look at who are the young wrestling influencers who have a lot of followers on TikTok or IG, and trying to bring them in and educate them and help them have fun and do lives together, right? I think that will be fascinating if that kind of collab happens.
Hey, real quick, guys, just want to take a second to ask, is Andrew bringing you some value with this video? If so, hit that subscribe button, give me a like, and share this with a friend. Go tell somebody out there who is in the hobby about Wrestling with Cards, the YouTube channel, and this interview with Andrew Goldberg. I also wanted to take a second to talk about some other ways that you can help support this show if you are enjoying this video or any of my other videos you've seen. Make sure to check out the podcasts I'm a part of. The Worlds Collide podcast, myself and Tony Vella from WrestlingTradingCards.com. We get together to talk about all things wrestling cards. Also, check out my personal podcast, Wrestling with Cards, the podcast, where it's a little bit more short form. I can get some stuff off my chest I've been wanting to talk about that maybe I didn't want to make a whole video on. You're going to want to check that show out as well as the videos here. A lot of the stuff is different. Some of it's the same. But if you want audio wrestling card content, Worlds Collide, Wrestling with Cards podcast, that's where to go. Hit subscribe. They're available on all popular podcast platforms. Leave me a review if you're digging them. And of course, tell a friend about the show. If you would like to help support my content monetarily, you can check out the Wrestling with Cards Patreon community, where for as little as $1, you can help show your support to my content, get your names in the credit. You can even go to higher tiers than $1 and get more involved with the show. You want to come on the show? You want to hear your voice heard as far as a video request? You could do all of that. Head over to the Wrestling with Cards Patreon page. Links in the show notes. You can also check out links to my eBay store if you want to buy something. We've got stuff for as little as $1 all the way up to some higher end stuff. Links to my social platforms and links to buy me a coffee. I don't have a coffee today. I've got this new blue and yellow limoncello bang. It's actually pretty good. So your donations have helped pay for that to keep these videos going. Everything I've talked about, links in the show notes. So after this video, or if you want to pause this video, go check those out. But let's get back to talking with Andrew.
Yeah, one thing interesting you're probably also unfamiliar with that we're trying to wrap our heads around. Like, for the most part, if you're a sports fan, you know cards, right? And you probably want a card of your favorite athlete or the biggest piece from your team or whatever it is. Wrestling is interesting in that the fans are even more diehard and willing to spend more money than sports fans, but it's t-shirts, it's action figures, it's memorabilia. It's not translating into cards. In fact, I've actually seen more people in the sports card world come over to wrestling and buy a piece here or there that's like a high dollar, high end piece than I have wrestling fans themselves. So that's something else that we don't see that in sport. You know, we're not necessarily seeing a Pokemon collector go in and buy a huge Jordan piece. You know, it's very interesting how that dynamic is working.
Hey, you gotta have you had Cage on the show?
I reached out to him. He didn't get back. You did immediately. So I was like, all right, Andrew, it is.
Well, let's give the guy some credit. I mean, he first off, we do a show every day.
Yes.
He's also a lawyer in New York, and he has 2 kids. I do a show every day. I have no kids. I'm fostering a dog, but Cage is, and I'm super lucky because I learned a lot from him. He is the rare breed that collects sports cards, collects wrestling cards, collects Pokemon cards, collects NFTs, and he is so open-minded, non-romantic about, you know, because those are all a part of his life.
Right.
You know, so I don't know, man. I'm a sports, like, I love sports, but I don't collect baseball cards because that wasn't the sport that I loved.
Right. But the sport you love basketball, you go after Kobe stuff. That's it. Like, that makes sense to me. That's what you do. But with wrestling, it's like, and another thing is the dollar amount. Like, in sports cards, people, how many times have you seen, you've done it yourself, put a lot of money into prospects or a lot of money into a specific niche you thought was going to grow. And with wrestling cards, I'll just tell you right currently, as of today, AEW Upper Deck product has been released and people are clamoring over this thing for 6 months. Hobby boxes are like $200 and the correlation is not good. Like, I think you have like I want to say like 1 or 2 autos per case. Like, it is very hard to hit those.
Who are the chase? Who are people chasing in that? Is there like a rookie class of wrestlers right now?
No, that's the thing. Like, Upper Deck refused to put rookie card logos on them because it's too hard. Because some of the talent has either worked in WWE, they've worked on the independents, so it's not technically their rookie card. So they said they just weren't even getting into that side of it. But it's really the autographs, and that they have parallels and stuff too. But autographs are so hard to hit. Even at $200, you know as well as I do, that's not a terrible price for a hobby box. And the wrestling card community is furious with it. They don't like, there's a lot of people ripping, but there's also this huge section that are like, I don't want to pay that. This goes back to what you're talking about as far as ecosystems of markets and letting stuff go. That's one real reason, or one real issue we have with wrestling cards, is there's a lot of people not as willing to open up their wallet like there is in the sports card world, where you've got thousands of dollars coming in. So,
well, why would I let go of my Ric Flair to go chase an auto of someone who isn't even on that caliber, right? Like, what brought sports cards mainstream? It wasn't 100% the reason, but it was a catalyst. It was one of the reasons. Was Luka, Trey, Zhan. That was 2 years of, and those were rookies people wanted to chase. Right. So having that, and that's on the manufacturer working with WWE to decide who are the chase cards, you know, and how do we find 1, 2, 3? Maybe they're not rookies, but like they're the guys that we're going to promote and girls that we're going to promote and advertise that are the chase cards or the chase people. I don't know who those are in wrestling, but it's not that people don't want to rip. I think people want to rip as long as they have some potential upside. Some, like, I'll rip this box for $200, and if I hit, I at least get a $500 card, $600 card. If you rip a case of $200, you know, wrestling cards, and the max you could make is, the best hit is like $100, that's not fun. That's the trade-off, I think.
And I think that's where we're at from that perspective. Let me put it to you this way. WWE Transcendent, I believe a case of that was like $13,000. So that's the highest product that WWE and Topps put out. Like, that's their premier issue thing. And
Transcendent.
And I was talking to Drake about it, and he was crunching the numbers like, okay, if I want this Vince McMahon Superfractor, like what is a good amount I should pay for this on bid that would have to, how many cases would I have to buy? And, he paid like, we've talked about this, so it's common knowledge, but it was just shy of 10,000 for that card. And he did the math. If he would have bought enough cases to hopefully pull that, you'd have been looking at like $600,000 or $700,000 in Transcendent product he would have had to buy to get the odds to get that. So you've got the highest selling card in a product, and you're still not even hitting what it would cost. So that's one thing.
It's not even in the ballpark,
no,
right? It's not like National Treasures for basketball is super expensive,
right?
But like, let's say you buy, it's like $4,000 to open one of the boxes. Don't quote me on price. I don't break. I don't open wax. I'm a gambler. So I know if I open one box, I'll open 100. So I stay far away. But the point of that is whatever the price of that National Treasures is, if you hit LaMelo or Edwards, you're getting paid off.
Right.
You're getting paid off. You're making your 20, 30, 40. I saw sales of up to 70K when you're the first one out there. So, okay, 4K to make 70.
That makes sense.
I'll spin that slot machine.
Yeah.
And okay, if I don't hit LaMelo or Edwards and I hit Maxey or, Halliburton, I'm getting my money back. And then the rest are misses. But if your hit is Vince McMahon Superfractor, there's one of those, first off, not 99.
Right.
Like a national. And you need to open up what it was like hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
And the max you could make is $10,000. I mean,
you see
I'm
the
just
problem.
Gonna wait for, yeah. Well, I mean, the market sees it and they're like,
Right.
I'm not so dumb. Never underestimate the market. People are smarter than we give them credit for. Collectively, individually, we meet a lot of not so smart people, but like collectively, the market is very, very intelligent.
So talking about markets and National Treasures, I'm sure you saw that Panini now has the WWE license. And with Prism WWE, most people were like, this is it. This is going to be huge because 2022 is going to mark the release of AEW Upper Deck, first ever product, as well as the first ever Prism WWE, which should be coming out around WrestleMania time. All of a sudden, Fanatics now has Topps, which WWE was on Topps. So now it's almost like they flipped roles. Like Topps mainly was just going to be doing wrestling and some soccer, but now Panini is only going to be doing wrestling and soccer and some other things. And they're not going to have all of the.
What was your first
licenses.
Impression with all this? Like,
I thought it was going to be huge. I was like, this is where we're going to see the popularity of people. Like, I think we're going to get more sports cards people coming in with Panini because it's the Prism boys, coming out here and flipping and all this stuff and trying to make tons of. I was like, it's going to be there, and there's going to be a lot of diehard wrestling collectors that are going to be left out in the cold because they don't want to open their wallet and they don't know how to adapt to the landscape of the hobby. But then I heard you say something on a most recent episode of how you think like Panini could be done now, and then I started thinking he's right. Like, we're almost back to where we started with wrestling because wrestling, the only WWE cards that would come out were Topps. Like, that was it. And Topps seemed to not care about their product. They get bios wrong. They would get all kinds of things wrong, specifically within wrestling cards. Their other stuff would seem to do okay, but it was like wrestling was the stepchild they didn't want or something. And I was super excited with Panini taking over. But then after I heard you say that, and I started thinking, I'm like, man, are we back where we started? So what do you think about Panini taking over WWE and where that could lead to the future of wrestling cards in the market?
I'm very, very bearish on Panini. I think we've had a few of their people on the show, so I like the people. Like, it's not. Nothing against the employees. It's just business's execution. Like, when I hear they get the bios wrong, right? I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Like in no other space are mistakes just like swept under the rug. Panini does like patches that aren't even worn by players.
Right.
I mean, to me, it's a disrespect to the customer. Like, okay, I understand that there's not a lot of competition, but I still think that you should do right and take care of your customer. And I think at a lot of kind of points in these last few years, I think Panini doesn't take care of their customer. The way they handle redemptions to me is shocking. It's absolutely shocking. So when they lost their licenses and then Topps got bought out, I'm like, dude, Fanatics isn't going to buy Panini.
Right.
Fanatics is going to let a sinking ship sink and then maybe buy a few of the brands for pennies on the dollar, right? I think it'd be cool if Fanatics bought the WWE license, but if I pick up what you're putting down, there's not a lot of money in that license, right?
It depends on what they do with it. That's the whole thing. Like, I can tell you WWE and Topps don't market their wrestling stuff at all. Upper Deck has been promoting every week on their show. Hey, Upper Deck wrestling cards. They even did e-packs. I mean, the e-packs were huge when they took over the AEW license. So it's a licensing thing and promotion. And I'm not.
I don't think they know how to market. I don't think Panini is very good at marketing. Like the two ways I see Panini market is like they do Instagram sponsored ads for their digital packs, and I see them on my Gmail banner. You know, I don't know why they don't use all the access they have, like ripping packs with wrestlers, right? Like ripping packs with Ric Flair or Triple H, like getting these guys on, having a Panini YouTube channel, creating experiences. I think that would be super cool because then people would associate the person on the card with the person ripping and using all of the access that they have with people to actually do something. Like I think that's what marketing in 2022 is. It's not banner ads. It's not Gmail ads. It's not Instagram story, even though Instagram story ads are probably better. It's finding a way to connect the consumer emotionally to the product and the people on that product.
And it creates an experience. That is. All right. So where do you think, and just again, your honest opinions, where do you think wrestling cards are going to go in the future? Do you think we're going to, like, I can tell you from a dollar perspective, it's been up and to the right, slow. Like it's not been the middle finger graph that everybody likes to talk about. Like we hardly ever see those, but we'll see a jump and then a new floor. And then, exactly. So do you think we're ever going to get to the point where where the mainstream hobby is going to look at wrestling cards on the same level as some of these ancillary things? Not saying basketball or football, but I'm saying, the Marvel, Pokemon, stuff like that. Do you see kind of I've personally talked to a lot of people in sports cards that are closet wrestling fans, and they don't want to admit, even in 2022, that they like wrestling. Do you see that changing? Even if they don't watch the current product, maybe they want to go back and get, a John Cena gold refractor. That Topps has tons of those cards. Maybe they want a Rock Auto. There's so much stuff out there. Do you ever see that getting into the mainstream of the hobby?
I think there's two things, right? There's vintage wrestling, and then there's like we're talking about like kind of the modern stuff.
Yeah, shiny parallel stuff.
Dude, the vintage stuff is incredibly rare. Like finding PSA 8s and 9s and 10s of Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Andre Giant. If I understand correctly, it's nearly impossible.
Yeah.
Right. And those are hand cut. Those are your mantles, right?
Right.
So those, I think it has lasting power, and I think it has lasting power as long as Vince McMahon and his organization is still in charge, because he's an incredible businessman. He's like the all-American story.
Yes.
Right? Like if you guys haven't YouTubed Vince McMahon, that family is the all-American story. Modern stuff, here's how I think digital needs to work. Like, let's say open packs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And inside those packs, maybe one special card, maybe not. You have a QR code that links back to the digital version of your card.
It's a good idea.
Panini has that already. Or you could do it the opposite. You have a digital version. You create challenges, so you could rip digital packs. And if you get all of the cards in the set, we'll create like a color blast version of the best guy. And only people that collect that full set get the color blast version. So you have digital cards. You finish a challenge. You collect these 10 guys from this year's set. And then you get like the Kaboom or the color blast, which people love, right? And it comes in, they make it custom made basically for the 100 people that completed the challenge. And now that's kind of cool. If they do that and combine digital with tangible traditional cards, I think there's some opportunity there. But from my experience, Panini doesn't innovate really well, and they don't execute on innovation really well. And then they don't market. So like, for example, a lot of people don't realize their tech team is in India. That's great and all, but like NBA Top Shot took off because their product was really good. they didn't understand market behavior because they printed like a million different.
Yeah.
The supply was out of control, so the prices couldn't hold. In that, you saw that middle finger.
Right.
But if you go to Top Shot, clean, simple, fast, sleek. You go to Panini Direct, I think it's called. Clunky, difficult. They didn't even have sales. Like, you couldn't go and look at comps up until a few months ago. So
I will tell you, you'll like this. I know you guys talk about Dunk and Blitz a lot. Topps had WWE Slam app, and it's the same concept. It was digital wrestling cards, rip packs. You know, they're limited autos. It's the same exact thing, just wrestling and Topps. Topps lost the license. Topps shut that down. Towards the last 6 months, I really saw the wrestling card community start rallying around the app. Like, I never thought I'd like digital. This is fun ripping packs. Look at this
fun.
card. Yeah. So, you know, if they do, I've talked to a lot of people within the community, and a lot of people are like, hey, if Panini does digital wrestling cards, we're in. And I'm like, that's a huge breath of fresh air that a lot of sports cards people, as you know, don't want any part of. So that could be something too that works in wrestling's favor, is the digital stuff.
it's both. Like, it's not going to replace tangible cards, but digital cards are fun because you could rip a pack and then you could sell it right there. You don't have to rip a pack, penny sleeve, a top loader, go on eBay, list it on eBay, have someone buy it, go to the post office. That's a clunky experience for a $5 to $10 card.
Right.
Like, that's not that fun. Even a $100 card. Like, I don't always want to be doing that. Most people have jobs and lives. I want to sit on my computer. I want to open packs. I want to open them with my kids, probably. I want to open them right after or right before watching like SmackDown or WrestleMania or whatever.
Yeah.
I want to have some fun. I might want to go on the auction site that Panini has, and who's a big like rookie or young talent? Scotty Too Hottie.
Well,
just kidding.
you say that he actually came. I don't know how much you follow.
Came back.
He just came back to GCW, so he's doing like big independent shows. Yeah.
Did he do the worm?
Yeah. WWE let
Let's
him go. WWE let him go a couple of weeks ago, and the next thing you know, he's showing up wrestling again in other promotions, and I'm like, this is fantastic.
We had this kid in elementary, maybe middle school. It was when Cisco and Scotty Too Hottie were popular.
Oh,
so
my
he dyed his
gosh.
hair silver, and he learned how to do the worm. And he would just like do the worm through the hallways. Kevin Smith, also
That's
awesome
ridiculous.
But like, who's the young talent?
Well,
right
like
now?
younger talent that's on top in WWE would be like Roman Reigns. Like, he's been around for like close to 10 years, but he's the top guy and still fairly young.
So like, and I don't know if it works like this, but like during August 2020, when base cards and basketball had a boom, people were speculating,
Right.
Basketball was gone with COVID and then it's back. Like, I'm going to buy Michael Porter Jr. I'm going to buy Zhan. I'm going to buy Lukas. He's actually going to be in the playoffs, right? So before WrestleMania, you could go to Panini Digital and you could be like, dude, I think Roman Reigns going to win. And someone else is going to take a bet on the heel, right? His adversary. And then you could kind of bet on WrestleMania right there.
Right. Within the digital.
That remember, vintage is its own beast. It's going to have it's always, up and to the right, as you guys like to say.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have this like a little bit of action speculating on what's happening in contemporary wrestling. I think that makes it cool and exciting too.
It's like action upon action if you're ripping packs and then doing that. It's like a double dose of action. So that's awesome. Moving on to another topic. We talked about leveling up, starting from the Zion and working your way up to Kobe. What other things has the hobby as a whole, what kind of life lessons has it taught you? What's something that stands out?
Cool. Here's a good one. This is one I learned last year. Like, don't be scared to miss cycles. Like, not just like days or cards. Like, don't be scared to sit out and watch a cycle and learn. Because let's use NFTs. Last year was the year of NFTs, right? It's easy to sit on the sidelines and be like, man, I'm missing out on so much alpha. They love the word alpha now. Or you could say, my alpha is going to come, but first I have to learn, right? Like, I'm not just going to come in and throw darts and win. That doesn't even seem fair. Like, that I'm a rookie. I don't know this world, and I'm going to win against people who are experienced. Sit on the sidelines, learn, watch. It's funny. Like, so I'm 32, but I do remember magazines like Sports Illustrated and Beckett, right? You'd have to wait every month to get that magazine to see what cards are going up, what cards are going down. Now you could see that every single day without spending a single penny. But like you could create accounts on Golden, PWCC, Alt, eBay, Top Shot, OpenSea. I mean, I'm missing a million, but like you could Card Ladder, and just look at comps and look at what's happening in the market and start to form your own narrative, right? Start to form your own investment theory and thesis and theories, and come back to the market and be like, now I'm prepared. And that's my example. I did that last year with sports cards and with NFTs. My co-host was doing incredibly well with NFTs. Someone I speak to every day, Cage, and I didn't jump into them. I sat on the sidelines. I learned, I watched, I tried to get a pulse of what's going on. And I think we always get this FOMO where it's like, oh, what if I just, like, I'm going to miss out on this. And we feel like it's never going to happen again. Dude, there's going to be more runs. There's going to be more bull markets. There's going to be more bear markets. You're not missing out by sitting on the sidelines and learning.
I also, to piggyback on that, you didn't mention it, but I want to take what you said and run with it because I know you'll agree with me. Not being afraid to sell stuff either, regardless of what it is, and using dollar cost average. I do that all the time. I know you talk about it, so I wanted to throw that out there. Kind of closing out
quickly.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
I think it's one of like, I don't know why people struggle with it, because when you do form that theory and thesis, you know when you make a bad bet. Mm-hmm. You know it, like it's in here somehow, you know, and yet we hold on and hope. And hope is not a strategy. Nobody's coming to save you. No magic's going to happen. If you know you made it, if you made a bad play, you're not a bad person. You're not a bad investor. It's one bad play. You struck out. So just sell the card and move on.
Yep.
And I don't know why that one always made intuitive sense to me. There's other things that I've had to learn that have come more difficult, but that one always made intuitive sense. I made a bad bet, move on next.
Yep, I'm with you. No spending time looking back, only looking forward. And speaking of that, last topic for today, content creation. Like, what made you want to start creating content, especially daily? You guys are nuts. But like, what has it done for you within the hobby? Brett McGrath always likes to say, like, everybody has kind of, I think, trademarked him as saying this, that creating content has become a hobby hack. It's opened up networks, which maybe you gain friendships, maybe you gain cards, maybe you gain business relationships. It's just creating content opens up so many avenues that you probably wouldn't have had otherwise. So from a content creation perspective, what have you learned? What have you enjoyed? And what kind of advice do you have for anybody who's wanting to start creating content?
Cool. This is a good question. And it's like, it's layered, you know, because there's the mental side of it. Like, you have to get over, like, what if I'm wrong, or what if people perceive me this way and my voice doesn't sound good and I don't look good. So there's like that mental side of, like, we judge ourselves and we're very critical of ourselves naturally. And there's also like the how-to, like, I don't know how to edit a podcast, or I don't know how to make a graphic. I love what Brett said. It really is that. It's the, like, we all learn differently, but I learned through conversations. Mm-hmm. And one of my heroes was Larry King. And I always loved how he interviewed people. Like, he was so good at getting, I think he learned a lot. I think he was inquisitive and curious. So a lot of what I've learned about the hobby is through the conversations, is through the platform. But then there's the second thing of, we all actually create content on a daily basis. You just need to record it. Or, as Gary says, document, right?
Yes.
We're actually all already content creators. I think we've all had those moments, like, whether it's like you make pancakes with your kids or your dad and sister Sunday morning, you're like, we can be a show, right?
Yeah.
Like, remember the show Emeril Lagasse?
Yes.
On Food
Yep.
Network?
Yep.
Like, bam, right? He was just a personality cooking. Right. So, like, who would have thought that would be a show that people watch other people cooking? But that's content.
Right.
And content creation, and I think any form of creation, whether that's written, like a blog, if it's pictures or photography, or if it's spoken word and video, there's something expresses in you. You know, you get to share a little bit about your heart, about your soul. You get to connect with people. You get to meet you have relationships with people and build them. I highly encourage it. And why did I want to do it? It was, I knew that I would feel good from sharing, but I also wanted people to avoid a lot of mistakes. Like, I'm a gambler by nature. I'm good at making money. I'm not great at saving money. And I had to learn that because, you go to college, you learn econ, science, writing, but no one teaches you money as like a study.
It's a huge issue.
Money is its own study. And I was like, I got to learn this. I don't want to be broke my whole life. Like, I want to take care of my parents. I want to have generational wealth. I want to live a huge life. I want to have a beachfront house. And okay, I understand working hard is a part of that, but why does that guy work really hard and he has nothing? And this guy doesn't work as hard, or he works hard, but he works way smarter, right? What does he do with his money that's more intelligent? And I wanted to learn that. I wanted to pass that on to people. So I wanted to hopefully save people the time and the agony and the pain of like, and I'm still learning how to do that. Like, I'm not great at it. But I got to tell you, I'm lucky that I have a great co-host who's an incredible communicator and an incredible storyteller to show me how to and watch and set an example of how to communicate properly.
One thing I think, I look at what you guys do, and it's what I'm trying to do here, and that's building a community. You guys have built up so many loyal listeners and people, to the point where you're like, hey, show your support, buy our NFT. And I was like, sign me up, I'm in. So I've got it. And I've had a blast doing that. It's fun to see other people, setting their profile pictures to the Tiger NFT, having a lot of fun with that. So what's that been like for you as far as like, I guess looking at that as kind of like a payoff to what you said you want to help people. So essentially you have, because you built a community, whether or not they're taking your advice, you've still built a community by putting out content. How's that been for you?
So it's been cool, man, because I loved from Tools of Titans, Tim Ferriss's book. He had like an excerpt from Kevin Kelly, who's a friend of his, 1,000 True Fans.
Yes.
Right. Like it was just a very practical goal. It was like, I'm not going to like, I didn't start this and be like, how can I get 1 million followers? Right. That doesn't feel very achievable.
Right.
But what you can do is where it felt very achievable is, how can I create a community of 1,000 true fans? Right. I love that, what he wrote there. So that was one that made it practical for me. With the Tiger NFT, that's super interesting. That was a really ambitious project. And what we did with it was like, we were into NFTs. We were putting out content every single day. And we thought, how do we get in other people into NFTs? If they wanted to support us, great. It was like 0.06 ETH, which is like $200.
Yeah. Pretty affordable.
Pretty affordable. A little like, not everyone's going to do it. So we didn't want to like kind of hold people's feet to the fire and say, if you don't do this, you're not going to be able to get our content. But we said, if you like what we do, and if you kind of believe in us long-term, this is a really ambitious project that we're trying out, and we're going to figure it out as we go, but we're not going anywhere. And it's been cool. Like, so we launched end of November. Anybody who minted 2 Tigers, we had like a $5,000 partnership with Dibs. And we took that money and pushed that right back into the community and said, if you have 2 Tigers, we're going to send you like a reward. Kind of Lazy Lions do that as well. Mm-hmm. So everyone got like $90, $95, I believe. We just got a partnership with SGC. It literally commenced this year. Now we get 50 free submissions every month. So we get to give that back to the community. Because truthfully, the reason we get guests like Gary, Nat Turner, Ken Gold, is because people listen to our show every day and comment and engage with our Instagram posts. So it looks like we're growing.
Right.
And because we're growing, big personalities want to come on the show. So really, I don't think of myself as anything more than a vehicle, right? Like a vehicle for the community to ask their questions, be heard. And I hope I'm a good representative, because I know if I'm not a good representative, they'll go elsewhere.
Right.
There's a ton of other content creators. There's a ton of other people out there doing amazing things. So I don't take that lightly. That's how I see it. That's pretty much. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. What's it's like rents due every day. The Muhammad Ali quote.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about, but anyway,
success isn't owned, it's leased, and rent is due every day. I know that we got to show up. And that's the daily thing. It's funny. It was one of those things that's a blessing. It seems challenging, and it was for 60 days to develop the habit, but it's a blessing because it holds us accountable every single day to show up for people.
And I just want you to know I've taken a lot of what you guys do and trying to grow this channel, this community, because when I started, this may have even been before I heard you guys. You guys actually may have not even been doing the show. I cannot remember, but it was when did the show actually start for you guys? Was it mid 2020?
July 16th, my dad's birthday.
Okay, so I started the channel in March or April 2020, so it was before you guys. And
before or after COVID?
Slightly before, right around that time. And it wasn't because of COVID. It was because that I was like, you know what? There's no wrestling card content. Nobody is doing this.
Yep.
So I was like, I'm going to start this and see how it goes. I'm going to take what you guys do. I'm going to take what I see other platforms do and try to apply that to wrestling. That's what I've been doing. And I'm just trying to do what you do, be the vehicle, get guests, help people, because there's just not a lot of wrestling card content on there. So I know.
How has it been going? What have been your takeaways?
It's been great. Again, hobby hack. There's cards I've gotten for PC and relationships that I built that I would not have had otherwise, and just experiences, opportunities, stuff like that. It's been fantastic. The only issue is it's so small that the engagement becomes a problem. And I know that you know what I mean by that. And so it's a slow build, but I'm just going to keep doing it. And I'm having fun doing it. It's a very nice creative outlet for me. And I've just been encouraging everybody that listens to this. If you like wrestling cards, if you like independent wrestling, if you just like talking vintage, if you like talking about, modern releases, whatever it is, I'm encouraging people to just hit the record button and start going with wrestling card content, because there's not a lot out there. There's the Card Foundation. Those guys are great. And then there's me, and there's Tony from WrestlingTradingCards.com. And there's Paul Anand, who does a wrestling card price guide. Other than that, there's not a lot of wrestling card content out there. There's some people ripping and doing breaks, but no deep dives into the cards and why we collect and markets and stuff like that. So you guys have been fuel on the fire to that. And hopefully I'm just going to keep it going.
That's been one of the biggest blessings. Cage, we started this show that we'd like to bring back. It's called the Come Up with Cage.
Yes.
A few people from our audience, they started shows of a liquidation fantasy show to help people with fantasy football, basketball, baseball. So inspiring and helping other people kind of go through the journey. That's easily the most rewarding part. And even on a personal level, people go through stuff in life,
Yeah.
their significant other struggling, whatever it is. And being there for people sometimes our hobby forgets how fortunate we've been financially in the last year, kind of regardless of wrestling, Pokemon, or sports
whatever
cards.
it is. Yeah.
A large percentage of people have made money. While COVID, not everyone's so successful. There's a lot of business owners who own restaurants that might be struggling right now.
Or
so
gone
being able to
completely.
Or gone, right?
Yeah.
So just having a little perspective that you have the opportunity to help. And second is, you're never going to be perfect when you start. You're not really even going to be perfect ever. So you're going to want to start, because when you're 50, 80, 100 years old, I want to live to 125. And believe me, people are people that were born in 1909 live to 100. So think about that. You're born in 1909, you live to 100. Born in 1999, who even knows? But you're going to want that legacy. You're going to want to know what you thought about as a kid. You're going to want to know your takes on the market. All of your grandchildren are going to be able to watch it. And that's going to be cool. Our generation, we have VHS tapes from when I was a kid. Now, if you start something and create content for the internet, everyone's going to see it. Your kids are going to see it. And you're going to want to have that in the future. You really are.
So closing out today, one last thing. What advice would you give to the wrestling card community? Take it however you want, whether it's collecting, buying, selling content, whatever it is. What's something that you think you could take from your experience and with sports cards, and how people could apply that to wrestling as we close the interview?
Yeah, people miss the forest for the trees with the whole NFT space. They don't know where it comes from. So I think, remember the days of Walmart and the kind of the disempowering consumer, for lack of a better word. Web3 isn't about record sales of monkey pictures. It's not about all of the hoopla and nonsense that they post online about it. It's Web3 is, if I could rebrand it, it's the power of community. And I think the wrestling community is super strong.
Yeah.
So I would lean into community, because the future, 100%, if you guys take nothing from NFTs and digital, it's that communities have power. They do have power. They have potential to move things and do things and create. It's like, together, united together, we could do more. I think the wrestling community is one of the most tight-knit communities there is. So I would lean into it more and be like proud of what you guys have.
Wow. Couldn't have said it better myself. So thanks for that. Thanks for your time today. And before we go, let everybody know. Oh yeah, this has been a blast. Like, again, this maybe I'm gonna use a wrestling term. Maybe I'm being a heel here, but I'm trying to help people within the wrestling card hobby kind of experience it from a different perspective from the outsiders, because like everybody within sports cards, most people understand all of the aspects of sports cards. But within wrestling cards, not everybody understands wrestling cards. Do you see the correlation there? So I'm trying to get more guests like yourself to come on and, help people out with collecting, investing, buying, selling, life advice, essentially. So thank you for your time. Let everybody know where they can find you, where they can check out your content, all that good stuff.
Follow me on Instagram. I am Andrew Goldberg. And you could also follow us on Lukas Tiger LeBron Podcast on Instagram. Cage Lawyer is my co-host. Probably an easier handle to find us at. Give our show a try. I think you'd enjoy it. David Peck was one of our first guests.
Yeah.
If you want to go back all the way to like last August, that's a good wrestling episode. He's a G.
Yeah, I was like, these guys rule, because whether or not you collect wrestling or not, you're giving him the time of day and you respect it. So I was like, I'm supporting these guys because they know what's up.
Dude, love you. Appreciate you, Zhan.
Yep, thanks for coming on. Everybody, thanks for watching. Have a good one.
Huge thank you to Mr. Andrew Goldberg from the Lukas, Tigers, and Brons podcast for giving me his time to talk on the show today. I sincerely hope every one of you that saw this and watched the whole thing all the way through, hopefully you're able to take something out of this and apply it to the way you do the hobby, or maybe how you do life. Whether it's a mindset change, the way you approach life, the way you approach the hobby. No matter what it is, the whole reason we do content is to help educate and, of course, build communities around the content. Take a second to give the Lukas and Tigers and Brons podcast a chance. It is a great variety show where you never know what the topics are going to be. Whether it's wrestling cards, whether it's NFTs, whether it's crypto market. If you're a fan of any of that stuff and you just love learning about things and how people process things, this is the show for you. I've said before that a lot of times I like to consume content that talks about stuff that I'm not as into. What's the latest baseball prospect everybody's going after? I don't watch baseball, but I'm interested in learning the thought process behind who's buying what, who's selling what, markets, etc. I just love learning, especially if it's things that I don't know as much about. And don't forget, this is a daily podcast. New episodes of the Lukas, Tigers, and Brons podcast every single day. Unbelievable. And I appreciate their content so much, and I'm always talking about supporting content creators, that when they came out with the Tigers NFT project that's associated with the podcast, I knew I had to be a part of it. I've been a day one guy on the Tigers NFT project. I love having them. They're awesome. Cage's daughter actually did the art for these NFTs. And I now hold 3. I can't wait to see where this project goes, and we know the guys behind it. One of them you saw talk today. If you're curious about the Tigers NFT and you want to support the Lukas, Tigers, and Brons podcast by getting into one, just hit me up on social media or email. DMs are open. Links to all that stuff in the show notes, as well as links to the Lukas and Tigers Brons podcast in the show notes and Andrew's social. Again, take a second to check out those links and show Andrew that you appreciate his time on the Wrestling with Cards YouTube channel today. And until next time, after you're done clicking the show notes, check out the videos on the screen wherever they are here for more great wrestling card content. We'll see you next time.